So I think that I've been really blessed by the Lord, and I just thank him for all the talents that I have.
Incredible college basketball.
He had lift when lift wasn't popular.
He was smooth, you know, he had a really good jump shot. He could dunk on anybody from anywhere.
It probably won't dawn on me till I'm about 10 years later when I'm old and watching somebody else play and say, well, I used to could do that, and I could do it better than that.
Two of the finest athletes in the country, Michael Jordan and Bias going up side by side. Bias just out.
Michael was somewhat like Lenny, but more high profile.
Now, Lenny Bias's game was probably as strong as Michael Jordan's at that point in their career.
A lot of people say, well, how do you do that? And I don't really think it's anything. It's nothing to me. It's a small thing. I dunk the ball and they just go off.
The Boston Celtics select Len Bias of the University of Maryland.
Really hoping that it could have been Boston in the end.
Yeah, I really was hoping that it was Boston. And my dream came true. You have a lot of free time. You just have to know how to use your time, and that's where the drugs and the social life comes into play. That's where a lot of players get caught up in. Yeah, I'm in the NBA now. I've got drafted, so now my dream has come true. All I have to do is go out and play and set some more goals.
Please come as soon as you can. It's no joke. Okay, Washington Hall, apartment number 1103. You're giving a mouth to mouth. You can hear it now. This is Len Bias. You have to get him back to life. There's no way he can die. Seriously, sir. Please come quick.
Wednesday, June 18th, 9:54 p.m. New York Air Flight 67 from Boston arrives at National Airport. On board and in first class, Len Bias and his dad. They're besieged by well-wishers and autograph seekers. 10:45 p.m. Bias drops off his father at the family home in Landover, Maryland. In Boston, Bias said the first thing he wanted to do was get home and see his mom. But when he arrives, his mom's not there.
It's ironic, you won't believe this, but I never got to see him before he died. I didn't. No, I was out, and when I had gotten back, and when I had come back home, they said he had just left. And I always teased him about his long legs. I said, that long leg rascal could have waited for me. And then, you know, we went on, and, you know, they said, well, he said he's going to be back tomorrow, and, you know, we're going to do this, that, and the other.
Bias then drives his silver Datsun sports car back to his dormitory on the campus of the University of Maryland. June 19th, 12:30 a.m. Bias goes to visit a friend, Brian Tribble, at his high-rise apartment close by the Maryland campus. Brian Lee Tribble, a suspected drug dealer who investigators believe supplied cocaine to Bias and other Maryland athletes. 1:15 a.m. Bias and Tribble leave the apartment and stop at the Town Hall Bar and Liquor Store outside the campus. Bias goes inside and buys 2 six-packs of private stock malt liquor and a bottle of cognac. Mike Cogburn, the man on duty, remembers it well. He says he got Lenny's autograph.
He was real happy. He was excited. He said he was out celebrating, you know, and having a good time. He said he just got back from Boston. You know, he was just out, you know, celebrating with his friend. That's what he said.
And you got his autograph?
And then I got his autograph. And we shook hands, and I said, take care. And he said, you bet I will. And then he left.
1:30 a.m. Bias and Tribble drive back to the Maryland campus. They're stopped for speeding by a student law enforcement patrol. The officer recognizes Bias and congratulates him on his success with the Celtics. Then he escorts him back to his dorm. No tickets issued. 1:45 a.m. Bias leaves the dormitory. Football player Keita Covington recalls walking Bias to his car.
I live right here in this building, so he was going out to his car. Matter of fact, it was the opposite of where it is right now, across the way, and I walked right around the corner. Yeah. That was the last I saw him.
2 a.m. Bias visits this woman, Bernadette Holton, at her home on Capitol Hill. Miss Holton told Channel 4 News Bias spent about an hour with her, made some phone calls, and then left. She went on to say that she first met Bias in February 1983. She says she's lent Bias about $3,000 to $4,000. 4 a.m. Len Bias meets a woman by the name of Christina Johnson at a 7-Eleven about a mile from the campus. She says he tries to talk her into going back to the dorm with him, but she refuses. They're together for about 45 minutes, then he leaves. 5 a.m. Bias returns to his dormitory suite at Washington Hall. Inside, teammates Jeff Baxter and Keith Gatlin. They say they were asleep. Up and awake, fellow players David Gregg and Terry Long, and friend Brian Tribble. The PG prosecutor says there's also a woman present. They gather in Long's room. 6:15 a.m. Bias suffers a seizure. He begins shaking. They drag him into the living room, and Terry Long begins CPR. Terry Long tells Channel 4, "You don't realize how strong Lenny was. You see, none of us had ever seen him sick or in that state before. I just kept waiting for him to get up and say he was all right." 6:32 a.m. Brian Tribble, in a slurred voice, calls 911 for help.
Basic County emergency. Yeah, I'd like to have an ambulance come. Room. 1103 Washington Hall. It's an emergency. It's Len Bias. And he just went to Boston, and he needs some assistance. What are you talking about? Huh? What are you talking about? I'm talking about someone needs, Len Bias needs help. Well, it doesn't matter what his name is. What's the problem? He's not breathing right. What's your name? My name is Brian. Brian what? Tribble. Tribble? Yes, sir. What's your phone number, Brian? Len Bias's room. I don't know the phone number. What's the room number? 1103. 1103? Yes, sir. Sir. Please come quick.
6:50 a.m. Bias is brought by ambulance here to Leland Memorial Hospital, where emergency medical teams begin working to revive him. 8:50 a.m. Len Bias is pronounced dead. He was 22 years old. Stunning news to the people of Washington. Shocking news to sports fans all over. As the news spread, police began an exhaustive investigation into Bias's death, and they discover some strange and startling information. Item 1, the lab report. Traces of cocaine initially found in Bias's urine lead doctors to discover huge amounts of the drug in his blood.
Mr. Bias died of cocaine intoxication, which interrupted the normal electrical activity of his brain, which controlled his heartbeat. This resulted in the sudden onset of seizures and cardiac arrest.
Item 2, the cover-up. Back at Bias's dormitory, police on the scene find things unusually clean.
The scene where Mr. Bias died was completely sanitized. Good word. It was completely sanitized. Nothing was there.
Police search a nearby dumpster and uncover some cocaine, a water pipe, and other drug paraphernalia. Then they learn of a conversation between one of the players in the room and Northwestern High School basketball coach Bob Wagner. Wagner is believed to have told the player that if there were anything funny going on in that room, you'd better clean it up. Item 3, police involvement. In another curious development, District Policeman Johnny Walker shows up at the hospital, but nobody remembers calling him to tell him what happened. Walker says he searched Bias's sports car, but the next day police found about 10 grams of cocaine hidden under the dashboard. Item 4, Lefty's team meeting. Later in the morning, Maryland coach Lefty Driesell calls the players to his house for a prayer meeting. But between prayers, Driesell reportedly tells the team not to talk to police about drugs. Item 5, the mysterious robbery. 7:15 a.m. on the day Bias died, in an apartment in Bladensburg, Julie Walker and her roommate Gail Diamond are getting ready to leave for work. As they walked out of the apartment, they were confronted by 2 gunmen. The gunmen forced them back inside, tied them up, and ransacked the apartment. Among the items stolen, a safe that reportedly belonged to Brian Tribble. Now, when the police showed up about 8 o'clock, they overheard the women talking, and one of the women said how her boyfriend had tried to save Len Bias's life. But at the time, few people knew about the Bias incident, except those immediately involved. Inside the grand jury room in Upper Marlboro, 23 men and women will carefully scrutinize the events that led to the death of Lenny Bias. They'll want to know how Len Bias got the drugs, and was there a cover-up of Bias's drug use and the drug use of other Maryland athletes? And how much did Lefty Driesell and other university officials know? And when did they know it?
The district is now being called the murder capital of the country.
All of us are appalled. We're agonizing about it. We don't like the fact that we had 372 murders last year.
92 people have been murdered in Washington since the first of the year. That's 38 more than the same time a year ago. A year in which murderers killed 372 people, the all-time high. Washington is now the murder capital of America, and possibly the drug capital, too. The district has about 625,000 residents. Every year, it arrests about 21 drug suspects for every 1,000 residents. In New York, the number is only 12 per 1,000. In Los Angeles, it is 10 per 1,000.
Our 48 hours ended as they began. Another gunshot in the night. Another young victim.
Brave young man, hang in there, dog.
Another day in the murder capital.
Drop wheels coming out?
Yeah. The capital of the United States.
Okay. Were they pretty close to you when they shot you?
To be born black in Washington is to be at an instant disadvantage. The black infant mortality rate is almost 2.5 times the national average. The injury most likely to kill a black child in Washington is homicide. Many suspects are from Washington's black school-age population. It's gotten so worrisome that some of the district's daily workers have been complaining to the country.
Mr. Speaker, the state of affairs in our nation's capital city is a national disgrace. It's an international embarrassment and dishonors the name of the first president, George Washington.
Even the district's best-known resident has expressed exasperation.
Certainly in Washington, we have a responsibility. It's a federal city, and a lot of the funds obviously come from the federal government, but there isn't any easy answer to that.
Last year, 60 to 80% of the murders in the nation's capital were listed as drug-related.
1:40 a.m. While at the scene of a new murder,
they chased them over here. The guy walks up, blows him into the, shoots him in the head, and they get into a Monte Carlo and drive off.
Stay still. Your mama's on board. Just stay still.
It's just her for us.
You hang in there with me, baby. Me and you.
Gunshot to the leg and to the shoulder. Entry, no exit.
Never seen an ice cream truck so heavily reinforced.
Yeah.
Got to be that careful, huh?
Yeah, man. Shit, ain't nobody getting in here kill me. When they start shooting, I duck. It's hard out here, though, man. Nighttime, I go in early because it's very scary out here, man. You don't know what might gonna happen to you out here, man. You can be an innocent bystander get shot.
You got hit right below your knee. And you happen to be in the line of fire.
Wrong place at the wrong time.
That wrong place was Drake Place.
Thank to God, I still have my life.
It's like an arm. They be shooting around him. They be shooting needles up in there, stuff.
Where is that at?
Down the street.
It's one down there. It's one down there, and one right there, and one right there.
Come on. What you mean smoke some crack up in here?
This is a combat zone. Where else do you find constant killing over the same use? Drugs. These hoodlums need taken care of.
Like with any sprayed on marijuana. Better known as PCP.
Where'd you find it?
It's all over the place. On the ground, in the cars.
We just dove back and hit them a second time. We made some arrests for drug violations. So I think that we accomplished what we set out to do.
But there's little relief on Drake Place. Hours later, the dealers are right back on the block. It's Thursday night in the district. And for the kids, the Go-Go Club is where the action is. A place to escape the streets. But there's no leaving the drugs and violence behind.
We're trying to eliminate any weapons or anything from getting into the club.
It's like a big thing to kill a person or to have a gun or to make so much money.
cousin died January 1st. He was the first murder victim of the year. Shot in the chest several times.
This is a violent city where children learn about drugs and murder early.
Homicide, often drug-related, is now the #1 killer of young people in Washington. What do you deal?
Cocaine.
Cocaine? What else?
That's all.
That's all? How old are you?
14.
How long have you been doing it?
Off and on, every about 2 months.
Just 2 months, so you're just getting started?
Yeah.
Why? Why did you get started?
I needed new clothes.
You needed new clothes?
Yeah.
And what else?
That's all. And I wanted to buy a little bit of gold.
You wanted to buy a little bit of gold?
I had money in my pocket.
How much money would you think you make in a day or in a week?
What, in a week?
Yeah, in a week.
It's about $800.
About $800 in a week?
Yeah.
How do you know about smoking cocaine?
There's people in my friend hallway be doing it every day. They call piping. It's this drug called boat.
Boat, what's that?
This is stay wrapped up in Reynolds wrap, and you take top paper and roll it up and smoke it. He got sprayed by Uzi. This man, he was walking down the street, and he got caught up by the hustlers and stuff, and they thought it was him, and they shot him.
You dropped these kids off in the middle of this.
This is where they live. They live in the middle of it. This is their everyday existence. This is it. Open the door. Okay, everybody's getting off. Nobody cares about these kids, man. These kids are lost. And go in the house, okay? If something is not done immediately for these kids, we've lost a whole generation of black kids. I mean this. And I mean it very sincerely. Let's go. See you, Willie. See you, boss. Be cool, okay?
Zach, guess the blow is harder when you find out that it's your baby. He's such a kid, you know? Such a kid.
For the homicide detectives, the break in the Ray case came this week. An informant told them the killing was a hit, growing out of the never-ending turf battles of the drug war. Police are still looking for the killers.
The murders, almost all of them, are committed in the black ghettos of Washington, which are like a combat zone. 92 murders so far this year, and no sign it's going to get better. The year is only 60 days old. During that time, there have now been 92 homicides here in the District of Columbia. The 92nd occurred this evening.
23-year-old Darrell Murchison was gunned down on March 10th. The two suspects in the killing are 14 and 16 years old. Murchison was shot 2.5 blocks away from where he lived. His mother was one of the first on the scene.
Like that, man. Y'all cover it up, please. Come on, Gwen. Come on, Gwen. You cover it up, please. She don't want to see him like that. Y'all can't cover it up, man, Gwen. Come on, Gwen. Please.
Blood pressure 140 over 80, pulse is 120. Good lung sounds, good distal pulses. He's 17, okay?
Okay, we're on the scene.
Hey, officer. We need somebody out here for a minute.
We need somebody to take the area off.
Hey, folks, can you back up, please? Give us some room.
You want to round up your witnesses quick before they have a chance to change their mind.
Was he conscious when he left?
Did he say who shot him?
The person said, "Who is that? Who is that?" And they just started firing.
Open fire?
Yes.
Your brother involved in drugs?
No.
I need you to tell me the truth. Did you use any drugs? Cocaine, PCP, crack?
We're not going to tell anyone. Just tell us so we'll know.
Cocaine, how long ago?
No.
No drugs.
What's he do with mom?
You're going to be all right. So relax. We'll take care of you, okay?
Police procedure makes homicide detectives grim specialists. If it's clear a victim will live,
You think it's going to be yours?
I think so.
All right.
they turn the case over to others.
Hey, we copy. Need to get up for a shooting. 103 Rhode Island Avenue Northwest. The Chinese Dragon.
Copy.
8:47 p.m.
102
Murder is just a radio call away.
And what was that? Can we help you, baby? Can we help you?
No.
All right. All right.
The dead youth, Leonard Morrison Jr., had been released from jail this morning on charges he sold drugs on this same corner.
People have lost the reality, I believe. They just shoot and someone has to die. They got to kill him. They got to see blood run, and it's incredible.
His friend, Zachary Ray, also gunned down at the Chinese Dragon, lies critically wounded in a nearby hospital where a homicide detective is standing by.
45, possibly.
Evelyn, subject number 2 is left MedStar to the ER. Gunshot wound to the face, in and out, right cheek, left cheek. However, he's got a severe gunshot wound, occipital area, and is still lodged in the top of his head. Prognosis would be grave.
Tonight's murder is the 81st homicide in the district this year. There were 52 murders this time last year.
My baby brother gets a headline, and he may get a tombstone.
5 hours after a bullet tore into his brain, Zachary Ray leaves surgery.
There was extensive brain damage, brain hemorrhage and swelling from the trajectory of this bullet.
His brother Bertie and sister Monica at his side.
President lives 16 blocks from where I am. 16 blocks from where my baby brother was slaughtered.
There is a waiting room right here that you can wait in. And the rest of the occupation about an hour.
He's got a large caliber entrance wound, occipital area. It's resting the top of his brain.
You're gonna make it a one?
Probably not.
Right now, the number of murders that we're getting, we don't have the luxury of time of going to investigate. All we do is have time to mark and move. Mark and move.
2 days and 2 nights in the other Washington. Armed and dangerous.
Do you know where Boo's at right now?
No.
Boo's the one to stab him?
Yeah, I was standing right there the whole time. I was trying to tell him not to stab him. For what? It ain't no sense to do it. I was pulling him away.
All right, where's the transport car? Right beside you. Behind us.
All right, you want to just take him right down the home?
This whole murder's over a $20 crack. Okay? That's all it's about, a $20 rock. If you saw it, fine. But if you didn't see it, I want you to be lying to cover up for your boyfriend.
I ain't coming up for my boyfriend. I ain't see him in it.
Well, what happened then? Tell me. What happened?
When I was standing the whole way, it was,
Show me where it happened at. Come on, you show me where it happened at then.
The second suspect, known as Boo, also lives in the neighborhood.
He probably hit the man, but I did not see Boo with no knife.
All the blood, is that where it all came from?
It was, yeah, the blood. It was right here, and they was standing him outside, too. Right here in the hall. Right here. Out here.
Let's get my take her on down, too, okay, for a statement. Apparently they sold him some bad drugs, and he wanted to get his money back.
It looks like it's been wiped already.
It's been cleaned off.
It's clean. Clean.
Are we sure it's a weapon?
She said it is. She said this is the weapon that he gave up.
That's good enough.
The juvenile we arrested for this says that the other person we're looking for, Boo, who he says did the stabbing, is at this crack house. And we're going to go see if Boo, Leonard, is there. Our backup. In most neighborhoods, most of the crack houses are known to everybody.
This isn't what you used to get.
And this is a known crack house where people come in to purchase crack, use crack to get high. Clearly, it's all narcotic paraphernalia. This is the last place he was at, we're told. So right now we just have to wait to get some more information where the guy Leonard might be at. So. Hey, Willie, make sure you get the back of 104, okay? Come on, what's going up?
Another tip. The suspect is at a relative's home.
Could you open the door for a minute, please? I want you to knock on the door. I want you to say, Boo, please, please, give yourself up to the police. Please. You're helping him out.
I'm not doing it.
You're helping him out. She says he's in that apartment right now. Okay? He told her he didn't do it. He was there, but he didn't stab the man. Here, come here. I'll knock on the door. You stand there with me? I'll knock.
No, why I gotta stand there?
Did you call out to him?
Ain't nobody in there.
There is. Would you please call out to your brother?
I'm not calling out. No, you're not in there.
With no search warrant, the police are stymied.
If we went in there illegally, we could jeopardize the case, which we don't want to do. Probably in there. Can't do anything about it. Seriously, just be truthful. That's all. That's why we wanted to talk to you before.
I can't take no murder job, man. I ain't never murdered nobody, man.
I want him to stay right here for a minute. After we left, Joe and I went back and stood in the hallway for a few minutes, and I heard movement on the inside, so I decided to stay. Next thing I know, the door is being unlocked. They opened the door, and there's my man standing inside the door. I should say sitting inside the door.
It's a new generation. Most of these people are using crack, using drugs, and it just causes them to do weird things, strange things. You know, they'll kill you for a $10 rock, crack rock. They'll kill you for anything at all, and not think twice about it.
This group is called Mothers on the Move Spiritually. Most have lost children to crack and violence. All are fighting to save kids who have not been hit yet.
This is really a burden on all of our hearts.
Jean Campbell started the Moms. Her son died 2 years ago.
That pain is so severe that if someone took a knife and actually stabbed you, it's not as painful as the pain. Amen.
Bernadette Trowell has known the same pain. One of her sons, high on drugs, was shot by the other in self-defense.
And I just have to go on. Don't think I don't pain. I still have my days where I fall apart because it is hard. I miss my older son. I had no brothers. My sons was everything to me. The worst part of it is that my younger son has the blood of his brother on his hands forever.
Hold on just a second, folks. Let's see if we can hear each other. The young lady is saying, my plan.
I'm saying America's plan. You talk
America's
about
plan.
the American dream. Well, it's become a nightmare for blacks here. We don't have the American dream. When you look out at these white picket fences, the key word is white picket fences. You don't see the White House with red, black, and green on it. Those are our colors. That's the black struggle. When you look at the faces of the people who are addicted to drugs, my brother has tried 3, 4, 5 times to get off crack. Every time he does, there's a program for him to go to here. But there's no support system when he falls back. There's no net. Look, think about Alcoholics Anonymous. You have your brother pick up or call on the phone and say, look, I got to make it to happy hour. Please stop me from making it to happy hour. Who does this boy have to call to say, please let me help me to put down that pipe? There's nothing there.
Meanwhile, the people who live in the community are left to do what they always do. Somehow cope.
Well, in the last 2 years, when I first started out getting high, I started hustling, making money on the side, to survive and support my habits. So I hustle every day.
And I'm running back and forth to different crack houses looking for her, and that was like putting a strain on me.
And my habit was like probably $600 a day.
Could you just imagine going to a door knowing a bomb is on it? If you knock on it, that bomb could explode. That's how I felt knocking on those doors. I told Kitty, I said, where your kids at? This was nighttime. And here she go, they'll find their way back home. Like they was little puppies or something, they'll find their way back home. I said, you need help, bad.
I'm going in detox to better my life and get myself together and start a new career. Yeah, sometimes I wonder why I'm still here. Much drugs I smoke.
This is the first day of the rest of your life. It's the best thing in the world you could have done.
Thursday morning begins with more bad news for Washington Mayor Marion Barry.
District Police Chief Maurice Turner is expected to declare a crime emergency today.
There's been yet another drug-related death.
It's depressing to go to bed at night and knowing how many people, like we went last night, it was 1. By this time it's 1, it's 2.
It's depressing and it's overwhelming the Barry administration. Drugs come from South America, guns come from Virginia and Maryland. Dealers come from New York. and pressure comes from all sides, even the very political base that has helped keep Barry in power.
They're saying that we've got a war on drugs, and we're fighting a war on drugs, but nothing's being done. Basically, in most of our communities, we're not fighting a war, we're collecting bodies.
Mr. Mayor, I think we need to move now, and I think that even tomorrow is too late. We've already had 2 shootings in our neighborhood in Benning Heights, Marshall Heights last evening.
The fear here in Washington is violence and the killings.
He goes to his police chief for advice, the same chief who has branded the mayor's anti-drug Operation Clean Sweep a failure. The mayor called the chief brain dead for trying to cut the program's budget.
He and I have disagreements like everybody has disagreements. I'm going to continue to lobby the mayor for more police officers. He's going to continue to tell me to do more with less.
You satisfied with what the chief's doing?
Of course, if I wasn't, he wouldn't be sitting here.
Thursday afternoon, running late. The angry ministers waiting for an answer on the curfew. But rushing back to that face-off, the mayor's limo is hit by another car.
I don't ride these cars, you know? I ride it.
We have a 2nd District Scout Car meeting at 34th and Whitney.
You ride with you all?
Mayor's in the front.
He hitches a ride in our van.
We have some good news and some bad news. Fred, the bad news.
The unfortunate fact is... The city's attorney says the mayor doesn't have authority to order a curfew.
Based on it, we could stay here all day and haggle about what we're discussing.
The good news is that we will assign 50 officers from SOD to the 6th District to augment the regular police officers.
How's that go, Mayor?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, another day in the life of a big city mayor.
What do you say? Another crisis.
You know, you just solve one at a time and keep on solving them. We just get good at it, that's all.
Last week, the council approved the curfew Mayor Barry didn't want. It goes into effect next week.
Mr. Lockridge and others also blame the collapse of families, the failure of churches, and the ethics of the white business community, which young blacks want to emulate. Instead of making $4 an hour at McDonald's, they say, they can make $4,000 a week selling drugs.
With few exceptions, blacks live in their parts of town, northeast and southeast. Whites live in the more affluent northwest.
What many blacks see in Washington is something tourists never notice. 2 cities, poor black sections and affluent white enclaves. This is where the majority of whites live, with relatively fewer of the murders. And here is where most blacks live, with most of the murders.
Basically, when we talk about who's dying in these drug shootings, you're talking about young people, you're talking about young black people, you're talking about guys in their late teens, early 20s.
Juan Williams covers urban affairs for the Washington Post magazine.
They can see that people have the fancy cars, have nice clothes. They can see the Kennedy Center. You can see fantastic things like Redskins football that they can't get into. And they want it. And they want it fast. And they're going to get it somehow. And I think that it sort of breeds a level of desperation. I'll do whatever the hell I have to do to make it. And the fastest way out right now is drugs.
The fact that the murder capital of the country is also the political capital suggests how little power the federal government has exerted so far. But that may change. Some local politicians are asking for federal military help.
The National Guard could bring in persons or military police in jeeps and patrol those areas where we know they're heavily fortified and insist that they turn in those guns.
The city has declared a crime emergency. It is planning to shift 450 officers from the wealthier districts where crime is low to the tougher sections where murders are high. As part of the shift, the police chief is expected to move some officers from desk jobs to street patrols 1 day a week. Ironically, say critics, the city is reversing its policies. In recent years, police budgets and resources have been cut back from a high of 5,100 officers in 1968 to barely 4,000 now. The police chief says the city needs at least 700 more officers. The mayor says there isn't enough money to hire them. At the same time, the mayor's personal life has been part of the problem. Critics say he sets a bad example. A personal friend, Karen Johnson, was convicted of selling drugs. Recently, the mayor went to a downtown hotel to visit a suspected drug user. He said he did not know the man was a suspect or a drug user. Mayor Barry has denied he uses drugs, but recently one of the mayor's most bitter critics, the publisher of a business magazine, raised the issue in a startling way.
I'm convinced he's a drug addict.
How?
I did cocaine, as most of the people that I knew did until a few years ago. Having done the drug, you recognize the symptoms.
I don't like drug dealers. They're the scourge of the earth. And I think it starts with oneself, being drug-free as I am.
Barry also insists he is not a bad example for the city's young people.
They have a lot of respect for me. Everywhere I go, even the young drug dealers, when I'm out walking, they'll come up to me and say, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad you cleaned up this place, glad you cleaned up this area. As you stop selling dope, we can do it better.
Washington is trying to do it better. Devout Muslims patrolling unsafe areas. Residents planning a march by 10,000 people in April. The city council trying to curfew teenagers. The mayor trying to keep more suspects in jail before trial and send them away longer after conviction if they deal in drugs and use firearms. A city council member, Nadine Winter, was reportedly warned not to push too hard against the drug merchants. But the mayor says the community can't hang back in fear.
Danger should not be the deterrent, it should be the willpower to go and stand up to these thugs and get them out of our neighborhoods.
Where will it end? A university study group accurately predicted last year's record number of homicides. Based on a new study, it says more than 600 men, women, and children will be murdered here this year. This is John Martin for Nightline in Washington.
When we come back, we'll talk with D.C. City Council member Nadine Winter, who represents one of the worst crime-infested areas in the district.
I just pray constantly for all the children. I do. God has helped them because they're trying to destroy themselves.
Got approximately 33-year-old black male. He's been shot 3 times, that's shot 3 times.
It's like living in a war zone. You hear gunfire every night. We're scared.
The saying in Washington these days is that D.C. doesn't stand for District of Columbia, but for Dodge City.
Darrell Murchison was the 105th murder victim in Washington this year. On the night he was shot, 3 others were killed, 5 others were wounded. It was, to that date, the bloodiest night of the year.
He's the second shooting victim that we've had tonight. We reported a guy in earlier who had 3 gunshot wounds, and he's only got an entrance exit wound to the leg. So he'll be up and out on the street, available to get shot again. One of the things we're finding most common now with our shooting victims and our stabbing victims, they've been stabbed before, they've been shot before. It's becoming a very common factor.
Last year in Washington, there were 1,400 cases of shooting and stabbing that did not result in death. 372 that did. This year's pace is 50% higher. In a sense, this is the story of one man who died in Washington's ongoing epidemic of drug-related violence.
The young man who killed him was a runner for Rayful Edmond's organization here.
Who?
Rayful Edmonds.
Who is that?
He's the man your son was working for.
Rayful Edmonds. I never heard of that name.
Rayful Edmond, who was once called the biggest drug dealer in Washington, D.C.
In the late 1980s and early 90s, it was a lawless combat zone.
Back then, the district was murder capital of the country.
An automatic gunfire rang out.
And the crack cocaine epidemic helped fuel it.
People lining up 2 to 3 deep around the block to buy drugs.
At the center of it all, Rayful Edmond.
Edmond ran the biggest crack and cocaine distribution ring in D.C. history.
I seen somebody at that time that was bigger than life.
At one point, he made up to $60,000 a day.
This is a photograph of Rayful Edmond III at the wedding of one of his sisters, Bernice. The charges come from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Emmanuel Manji Sutton Rayful's half-brother, one of his street lieutenants. John, known as Johnny Mumford, a cousin who distributed cocaine to the street lieutenants. Melvin Melbo Stewart, a courier who transported large quantities of cocaine. Renice Thompson, Rayful's sister, who, with her husband, cut and packaged cocaine for street sale. And another sister, Rayful Edmond, who used a counting machine in the basement of her Maryland house to tally the take.
This is a business, a corporation, or a well-organized organization, just as you would see in any other business. That's exactly what this is.
And this was one of the main distribution points, Orleans Place in Northeast Washington. Think of it as the base of a corporate pyramid. At the lowest level, mules who could earn up to $1,000 a week bringing bricks of cocaine into the city. Lookouts who got $400 to $800 a week. The street sellers, the best of whom, working on commission, could make $3,000 to $5,000 a week. One step up the corporate ladder, the younger enforcers. For an efficient murder, one young hitman was rewarded with a $50,000 Mercedes. And couriers, who transported large quantities of cocaine from the West Coast. Mid-level management was filled mostly by family members who cut and packaged the drugs, counted the money, oversaw distribution, and managed the street workers. Their salaries, $3,000 to $5,000 a week. And at the top of the pyramid, 24-year-old Rayful Edmond, who, according to the U.S. Attorney, ran the corporation, set up sort of an employee's benefits package of legal and burial expenses, dispensed perks like trips to the Super Bowl, sold retail, bought wholesale from a member of the infamous Crips gang in Los Angeles, who, in turn, imported his cocaine directly from the Medellin drug cartel in Colombia.
First met Melvin Butler, you know what I mean? You could tell they was on some gang shit.
Prosecutors say Butler was Edmond's West Coast cocaine connection.
Edmond's organization was distributing approximately up to 20 to 30 kilos of cocaine per week here in the District of Columbia. If you look at that, that's about 100 kilos a month. That's over a ton a year of cocaine and cocaine base.
Chapter 3, a popular go-go and nightclub in the Anacostia section of Southeast Washington. It's popular with local college students and with local drug dealers. Rayful Edmond liked it too.
One of the things that happened is we start hearing in the news about the chapter, and hell, I'm from the Stone Age. I'm saying, what is the chapter on the team? And how many kids on the team go to the chapter? Well, the whole team raised his hand, you know, and I'm saying, oh my God.
Coach Thompson got word that two of his players, John Turner and star freshman Alonzo Mourning, had not only met Rayful Edmond at the chapter, they had played basketball with him, gone to dinner with him on numerous occasions. Thompson summoned Rayful.
I had to sit and talk with him, and I sent the word out. I sent the word out on the street that I'd like to talk with him. And he came in and was extremely polite, and we talked, and it was almost like a tacit agreement. You know, do me a favor. If you hear of anything, if you see anything going on out there, use whatever resources you have to stop it from happening. Now, that's the sum total of it. You understand? Yes, sir.
It is a bizarre image. One of the most respected coaches in the country sitting down with an accused drug kingpin whose organization is suspected of responsibility for more than 30 killings in the D.C. area. This past February, Georgetown players John Turner and Alonzo Mourning were interviewed about Rayful Edmond by agents of the DEA and the FBI, by an undercover officer of the D.C. police, and by an assistant U.S. attorney. When the interview ended, one of the law enforcement officers said to Alonzo Mourning, "You can tell Rayful we're going to get him." On the night of April 15th, an interagency action against Rayful Edmond's organization got underway. Agents of the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, together with police from the District of Columbia and Prince George's County, Maryland, raided houses and apartments throughout the region.
Did you find anything? Anything happen?
One of the first to be arrested, Rayful Edmond III. During the course of the night, 16 others were arrested, many of them members of Edmond's immediate family. There was no resistance, no gunfire, and no surprise.
If they do find some drugs, what are they gonna find? $50 worth of PCP? What kind of bus is that? The FBI, DEA, they made a fool of themselves. That's what I think.
A raid had clearly been expected for some time. Neither drugs nor money in any quantity was found, but what is alleged to have been a significant drug operation had been taken off the streets. D.C. police are braced now for what they fear will be the next wave of violence, as what they say was Rayful Edmond's territory is carved up by rival organizations.
A big drug bust overnight. A series of raids by local authorities has netted a number of arrests. We don't know how many yet.
D.C. police, federal agents tonight are claiming victory in the latest battle in the war on drugs. This after an overnight operation that netted about 24 people in the Washington drug trade.
So I'm saying to myself, the night I get locked up, some big shit happening. You know what I'm saying? But I ain't never really even phantom that I was the big shit. You know what I'm saying? The police ran up to me and said, which one is that? They said, that's Kirk Bones. They said, how old is he? So I said, I'm 18. And they was like, he old enough. But I don't even know. I would say the juvenile number. They wouldn't have put me on camera. That's how naive I was to the law. So when they said he old enough, they bum rushed me, flashed me up, you know, put me all across the TV all over the country. Next thing you know, by the time I woke up from court, go up to the marshals, everybody was like, you're a movie star. You're all over TV.
Listening to Bootsy, the defendant's own mother, who was also convicted co-conspirator, talk to Alter Ray Zanfil about Rayful Edmond and how he got started in the drug business and how he got so huge in the drug business has got to be devastating.
Edmond's unsuspecting mother talked at a local restaurant with a friend who had agreed to wear a wire for the prosecution.
You know, like he was doing hand-to-hand coming, him and Johnny on the corner, and they was selling, so they was getting it right. And then it just got too big. He just went out on his own.
Ask you one question. Rayful Edmond III, the man who was accused by the U.S. Attorney's Office in this town of being responsible for bringing a ton of cocaine into this city on an annual basis. How is he being treated while he is in jail? Is he being treated as a bad guy, or is he being treated with a great deal of respect?
Well, let me say this. I would tend to think that he's probably being treated with a great deal of respect. If it was any indication of what I saw at the arraignment, okay, in other words, when the man was arraigned, the courtroom was packed with people who had come not as adversaries, you know, that were against this man dealing drugs in their community. Because here's what's happening to our youth. They're killing our youth at 13 and 14 and 15. They simply aren't being buried until they're 30 and 35 and 40. That's what the problem is. They're killing their brains, they're killing their minds, etc. They're killing their potential. But even in the hallways of the courtroom, of this particular courtroom, the hallways were packed. A father who had a daughter that was to stand arraignment proceedings there, he was in the hallway. He could not even get in the courtroom simply because every seat was taken with sympathizers of a drug trafficker who had not only destroyed what I call a community, but who had actually killed a lot of youth and their potential, and they just simply are not buried at this point.
I did want to make one comment with respect to the treatment of Mr. Edmond in the jail. I can't speak for the other components of the system, but I can assure you that Mr. Edmonds is not getting any special treatment at the D.C. jail. In fact, Mr. Edmond and the 15 co-defendants in this case are in administrative segregation. In effect, and in addition, Mr. Edmond is in involuntary protective custody because there have been some threats on his person, and so the movement is controlled. It is being carefully monitored in conjunction with DEA, the MPD, the FBI, the Marshal Service, and so they are secured. They are being handled as any other prisoners.
The verdict today in the Edmond drug ring trial in Washington, 24-year-old Rayful Edmond convicted of running a $2 million a week cocaine crime outfit in the nation's capital. The one-time schoolyard basketball star faces a mandatory life sentence now. 10 co-defendants, including friends and relatives, were found guilty on related charges. Security surrounding the trial was unusually tight. Names of the jurors were kept secret even from the judge and lawyers to guard against possible reprisals.
The jury found Edmond guilty of a massive drug conspiracy and sentenced him to life without parole.
I always knew throughout the whole trial that we was going to get found guilty.
You're familiar with the drug bust that went down about 10 days ago, the organization we've been talking about all evening long, Rayful Edmond's organization.
Yes.
The drugs came from Los Angeles, from the Crips gang. It's a black gang.
You know something? You know something? Let me tell you something. This is how it works. You go over there, you get your airplanes, you go over to these other countries, you bring drugs back, you put them into these black neighborhoods. You understand me? People don't, let me tell you something. You know some of your biggest drug dealers in America sitting right up in New York on Wall Street? Right. You know that?
Look at the night of the base there, public enemy.
Don't try to put the blame on all black people. You know, that's a statistic, that's the lie. See,
look at the video.
Just statistics in America is lying on black folks all the time.
Thank you.
You know what? We don't own airplanes, buses, trains, none of that stuff. You know what? The U.S. government plays a great big part, and it's called genocide in America, and that's what it's about.
The FBI got a tip from an informant that Rayful was setting up deals from the prison at Lewisburg.
Edmond's drug activities while incarcerated surpassed in volume and in scope the drug distribution network that he developed and ran prior to his imprisonment.
Communication between the capitals of Colombia, one of the drug-producing centers of the world, and the United States, one of the drug-consuming centers of the world, exists on two levels.
Played the tapes for him with his voice setting up drug deals.
You sent any money already? You sent any money?
We had the undercover officer there that you could meet and see who we'd actually arranged for drugs with Ray, with the evidence we had against him, how long we'd been investigating him. He told us that he'd been thinking about this for a very long time.
He'd already made a decision that when they stepped to him, he was going to cooperate.
We arranged for him to call us, collect at an undercover apartment, and then instead of his friends and family three-way phone calls, we would three-way the phone call for him.
You beep your source, he gets back to you on the number, you make your arrangements, and it's normally by public telephones, which make interception by electronic surveillance.
Okay, that's how we set it up. They would call me and I would call back.
We were very surprised that Rayful was hoping for this.
What about your mother?
My mother?
Your mother on tape talking about you.
I don't know if she was talking about me or who she was talking about.
Right here behind the concrete walls, steel bars, and locked doors of this maximum security federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Following his conviction as a drug kingpin, Edmond was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. But within just days of his arrival, he was back in business. He was dealing drugs right from his prison cell.
Just about everybody inside the jail in some way, shape, form, or fashion is dealing in drugs, either directly or indirectly.
He was caught and 2 years ago struck a deal with the feds. Ever since, he's been telling them exactly how he pulled it off.
Tell me what drugs you dealt with in prison. Cocaine?
Cocaine.
Crack?
Crack.
Heroin?
Heroin.
What else?
Marijuana. Those were the basic 4: cocaine, crack, and heroin, and marijuana.
There's nothing left. You did the gamut.
Yeah, I did it all.
He did it all and then some. For starters, he brought drugs into the prison through this visiting room. He hired other inmates whose girlfriends, during contact visits, would pass the stuff packed in small balloons.
She might kiss him, and he put them in his mouth. He drank a little bit of soda or water, swallow them. She go do it again. Good
He's
day.
got them all inside.
Got them all inside. Then when he get back inside the institution, he spit them up.
What's the most you ever heard of those that any one person
That I
could.
ever seen one person bring? I seen somebody bring in like 60 of them.
Edmond says prison officials know this goes on.
It keeps the jail mellow. It keep people patient. You know, they be able to get high and chill. So they like this and let these things happen sometimes.
Come on.
Yeah, that's what they do.
He wasn't just selling drugs to other prisoners. He also masterminded the shipment of more than 2 tons of cocaine and crack from the coca fields of Colombia to the District of Columbia.
In some ways, he's like the Babe Ruth of crack dealers.
Eric Holder, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, was, until recently, the top prosecutor in Washington, D.C. It was his office that locked Edmond up in the first place.
Tell us the magnitude of his operation from inside the prison.
If you look at it on a monthly basis, he was exceeding that which he did when he was running what, to that time, had been the largest drug operation in Washington, D.C. history.
He was doing more from in prison? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at its maximum, he was doing about 400 kilograms of cocaine per month while in prison, and while on the street, he was doing about 300 at its maximum.
Edmond says it was easy to do from behind bars.
I think it's much easier than when you're on the street.
Easier than on the street?
Much easier because you're right there with the people that have direct access to the narcotics that you need. Colombians, Cubans, Mexicans.
All thrown in together?
All thrown in together.
Thrown in with criminals like Osvaldo Trujillo Blanco, or as Edmond knew him, Chicky, a convicted drug felon.
He had a high-profile case. I had a high-profile case. So, you know, we were just wanting somebody to introduce us. We was waiting for a person to come along and say, this Chicky, this Ray. And we just gonna go from there. It was right there. What else? You know, what else could we do? It's right there.
Chicky is cocaine royalty, son of Griselda Trujillo Blanco, better known as the godmother of the Colombian drug underworld, and a founding member of the notorious Medellin drug cartel.
Griselda Blanco would admit to running a massive narcotics ring, conspiring to import and distribute literally tons of cocaine into the United States. She's accused of ordering dozens of murders. Griselda Blanco fled her war-torn homeland in 1974. While she started at the bottom of the drug trade, she would become one of the leading distributors of cocaine for the infamous Medellin cartel. If Griselda had a soft side, it was only for her 4 sons: Dixon, Uber, Osvaldo.
Does it make any sense to put the biggest guy from D.C. and someone from one of the largest cartels in Colombia in such close proximity? You'd know it would be inevitable that they'd come together.
No, I'm not sure that's true. I wouldn't make that assumption. I would think that both people, having been put in federal prison, would have been incapacitated.
But they weren't. A year after Edmond met him, Chicky was released and returned to his horse ranch in Colombia. And that's when business really took off.
So how did you pull it off? I mean, you were doing pretty serious and impressive deals.
Oh, yeah.
From inside, I love maximum security penitentiary.
Security.
Specifically, how did you do it?
Specifically, we would use the visiting room, the telephones.
Specifically, these telephones, conveniently located just down the hall from his cell. Edmond would contact Chicky simply by placing a collect call to a friend in Washington. Every one of those calls was recorded.
Hello, this is the AT&T operator with a collect call. Who's calling, please?
Right.
Will you accept the charge? Uh-huh.
The friend, in turn, connected him to Chicky all the way down in Medellin.
What reason would I be calling out the country? I'm not from Colombia or South America. Or
Here's an inmate that's calling Medellin 3 and 4 times
a week. So you know I'm up to something. Just common sense would tell you. If you got good common sense, it would tell you that I'm up to no good.
In one afternoon, he made 59 phone calls to 5 states and 2 foreign countries.
I thought that we listened in on their phone conversations. I thought that when a guy makes a phone call, that the prison kind of knows what he's talking about.
All the phone conversations, all the social phone conversations are recorded, but not all of them are monitored.
Now, does that make any sense?
Well, it doesn't make any sense except for the fact that they don't have the ability to. There's simply not enough people to listen in on all of the phone conversations that all of these prisoners have.
And the prisoners know that. They count on it.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
But Edmond says he and Chicky weren't taking any chances. They spoke in code.
Remember, he used to live in 18th Street. Yeah. That he was going to move to downtown to 16th Street.
Yeah. When he made that statement to me, he was letting me know that the price went down 3,000, went from 19th Street to 16th Street. So I automatically knew what he was talking about.
Edmond used an entirely different code when he spoke to his distributors back in Washington, D.C. Believe it or not, he used Pig Latin.
You want to hear a little bit?
Yeah, I want to hear what you'd say. What did you say?
Oh, I was just saying, I feel good today.
So fast. You could do that.
You got to be fast so nobody will understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you could just do this whole interview like that?
Yeah, I could do the whole interview like that.
Now, but what kind of money were you making out of this?
I wasn't making the money that I should be making, but, you know, I was getting 5,000 here, 10,000 there, which is good money for somebody that's in jail and doing time.
It was good money for anyone. $200,000 in 2 years collected for him by associates on the outside. But the money flow was disrupted when Chicky was gunned down in a Medellin nightclub, but only temporarily, because Edmond quickly struck up with another inmate, this time from the Cali cartel. Freddie Aguilera was serving 60 years with no parole, just a cell block away.
And you hook up with another Colombian.
Yeah. Like I told you, the temptation, you know, you got people every day, different people coming to me trying to hook up drug deals, and this is something that I can do and I know how to do. So it was just hard to say, no, I don't want to be involved in it when I can just say, okay, let me set this deal up and give me a quick $20,000 or $30,000.
Prison authorities never did figure out what Edmond was up to, but the FBI and local police here in Washington, D.C. did, thanks to a tip from a jailhouse informant. When the feds went to Edmond with the evidence, much to their surprise, he agreed to cooperate. With his help, the government was able to lock up 15 drug dealers, among them some of the most violent drug thugs in the nation's capital.
Why did you decide to cooperate?
Because I wanted to put it all behind me. I wanted to help my family, first of all. That was the first thing that gave me the motivation. My mom, my aunt, and my 3 sisters.
His mom, his sisters, brothers, brothers-in-law, and others were all in the family business with Edmond and are all serving time. His mother and sisters are together at the Alderson prison camp in West Virginia. The feds told Edmond they would not recommend a sentence reduction for him, but they agreed to go to bat for his 56-year-old mother, who was sentenced to 24 years in prison for her role in Rayful's drug enterprise.
That's my mom. And, you know, I love her, so, you know, and I miss her. And, I hope she'd be okay.
I feel very honored. I mean, he has life or 2 life sentences, and he didn't think about himself. He thought about his mother.
Constance Bootsy Perry is the unlikely matriarch of Washington's most prominent crime family. Before she got locked up, she had a $40,000 a year job in the federal government.
So you got your kids educated, you made sure they went to church, you had a good job, your ex-husband had a good job?
Yeah, he had a job. He worked for the government, too.
He worked for the government. You were middle-class people.
Yes.
He was not raised in the inner city. He lived in the suburbs.
No.
Safe place.
Yes.
How many of your children are in jail?
6.
You had 7 kids and 6 are in jail. You're in jail?
Yes.
Come on. What happened?
I can't really say, and I think basically I'm in here only because I knew what was going on.
She was a mom to me, but also she was a personal friend to me. So when things, you know, selling drugs, like I told you before, so many things go wrong. People get killed, people lose their jobs, people get strung out, and whenever things go wrong or things don't go right in my life, she was my friend. I go talk to her and tell her about all these things, about what's going on with me, and she knew about all that. And she ended up telling all the things that I told her to an informant on a wiretap, and that made her be part of the conspiracy.
Well, it was more than that. Bootsy admits she once counted her son's drug money, and she accepted a car, a house, and other gifts purchased with his drug proceeds.
My mother always wanted a nice big house, you know, so I wanted to be able to buy that for her one day. She always wanted a Mercedes. I wanted to be able to buy that for her.
When Edmond was a child, both his parents sold drugs. The father, allegedly heroin. Bootsy says she sold diet pills and admits she sometimes had Rayful handle the money. But she blames his friends for getting him into the drug trade.
he saw the fast money, or he saw them driving big cars, and he said, hey, man, how did you do this? How did you get this? You know?
The money.
Yeah, the money. Or greed. Just say greed. I'd say greed.
This is your watch.
Yeah, it used to be my watch.
Used to be your watch. Yeah, the government now has this watch.
Yeah, the government owns it now.
How much did this watch cost?
Oh, close to $100,000.
Was this typical of what you would buy when you were...
Typical things that I would buy when I was home.
Well, you were fancy.
Yeah, I was real jazzy. Yeah, I like, you know, try to have a lot of class.
Did you wear a lot of diamonds on your
No, I wasn't. I just had 1 carat. I just had a 10-carat diamond ring.
Oh.
A 3-carat for my ear, and just a diamond chain that matched the watch.
Very simple.
Yeah, just, you know, simple, but stand out.
Today, he's trying not to stand out. So the feds have put him in a little-known witness protection program for convicts. He lives under an alias in a different prison where it's hoped those he betrayed won't find him. But if he's hiding out, why is he talking to us? He says he wants the kids in Washington, D.C., who see him as a hero, to know that what he did was wrong.
A lot of my friends from my neighborhood lost their lives because I brought drugs in the community. You know, the
crack
people
babies.
dying.
Crack babies?
Some babies probably was born from crack because of me. Yeah, I feel bad about it now, but back then, you know, I was just thinking about the power.
We tried to ask the Bureau of Prisons what they're doing to prevent prison drug dealing, but they refused to comment. So we asked their new boss, Eric Holder, who has not yet had a role in making prison policy.
As a result of the Rayful incident, a task force was created to really look at the whole system and decide what we could be doing.
It's been 2 years since you first found out about this. Not you, I mean the Bureau of Prisons, the government, the Justice Department. It's been 2 years, and from what I'm hearing, the problem really has not been fixed yet.
I think that's right.
You're saying that it's remotely possible that as we're sitting here, somebody in some prison's making a phone call and setting up a drug deal somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's remotely possible, but I think we're also going to be in a position real soon to say it's not possible.
Do you think that's going on today, right now?
I'm quite sure it is, yeah. People are sitting in prison making drug deals, yeah. You know, you're sitting there, you have nothing to do. And everybody needs money, and they love money, so I'm quite sure that it's going on right now.
In fact, the Bureau of Prisons may have made it even easier. When the FBI began its investigation of Rayful Edmond, there were 3 phones on his cell block, and inmates could use them every other day. Today, there are 4 phones, and prisoners can use them every day.
The drug market is a national problem. It's a supply problem from South and Central America. It's a demand problem here in America. It's a $150 billion business.
Good evening. Marion Barry tonight delegated many of his duties as mayor of the nation's capital, but did not resign. Word of this came hours after the D.C. mayor was brought before a federal magistrate on misdemeanor drug charges, buying and using crack cocaine. After months of rumors, accusations, and denying he used drugs. Barry was arrested overnight in an FBI drug sting operation, reportedly videotaped by the FBI. Barry's lawyer said the veteran mayor will plead not guilty. All of this raises questions about Barry's political future, Jesse Jackson's plans, and a city already plagued by drug crime and record-high violence, including murders. Law correspondent Rita Braver begins our coverage.
Mayor Marion Barry was still drawing cheers in his neighborhood even after his arrest last night on charges of using crack. In an FBI undercover operation, sources say former model Rashida Moore, described as a cooperating government witness, allegedly lured the mayor to a rendezvous for romance and drugs. While a videotape rolled in this Washington hotel, U.S. attorneys and FBI agents watched over a hidden closed-circuit camera as the mayor allegedly gave Moore money for cocaine. Unknown to Barry, she then obtained cocaine from an undercover officer standing by on the scene.
I always did that. You're kidding. I always did it. I've been tuning a lot, and I've been doing that too, man. How is it? How is it? Where's the rest? Where's the rest of it? Is it? Good.
Junior High. We're staying out in the FBI Metropolitan Police Internal Affairs Unit. You're under arrest. Illegal narcotics. Raise your legs. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'd like you to put your hands on the wall. Please put your hands up on the wall.
Good setup.
Okay. Here, we're going to let him take his coat off. Okay. Put your hands on, Mr. Mayor, for a second. Keep your hands up. We're going to slip your coat off for you. We're going to have some people, EMT people, take a look at you, make sure you're not going to pass out the tree. Okay? Okay. Okay. Okay.
And everything.
Let's get the woman out of here. Somebody get me the brown box sitting on the inside.
Damn, it's not up here. I'll be damned.
Just take it easy.
I know we can't get tricked in this shit like this.
Okay.
I get tricked in this stuff.
Give me the brown pad.
I get tricked in this.
Let's get the woman out. She's out. She's gone.
I get tricked like this. Fucking damn. But set up. I understand that. Come on,
please stand still.
Goddamn set up like that.
Before we do anything, Mr. Mayor, I want to read you your license rights.
What am I arrested for?
Just listen. I already told you you're arrested for violation of narcotic laws in the District of Columbia.
Pay attention to what I'm going to read.
Set up.
Okay, I understand. Pay attention to what I'm going to read.
Set up. God damn it, the fucking set up.
Listen to your rights,
Mr. Mayor.
Goddamn, I should have come up here.
Before we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions, and to have a lawyer with you during questions.
Damn, got it set up.
If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questioning if you wish. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you'll still have the right to stop answering at any time.
I'll be goddamn.
You also have the right to stop answering at any time until you talk to a lawyer.
I'll be goddamn.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, do you understand your rights?
Yeah, set me up like that.
You understand your rights, Steve? Okay.
Got me set up. Ain't that a bitch?
An affidavit filed by one of the watching agents said, I observed Mr. Barry take possession of the crack cocaine and inhale on the lit smoking apparatus. Agents then burst in to make the arrest. The U.S. attorney said the setup was not illegal entrapment.
He entered on his own volition. He himself put himself in that situation.
Flanked by his wife, the mayor appeared in federal court today, where he was told he could face up to a year in prison, and prosecutors said his urine and blood tested positive for cocaine. He was released on personal bond pending trial.
We'll enter a plea of not guilty.
The mayor refused to discuss the charges.
On the other hand, I'm going to leave here and go about the business of government.
But late today, Barry said he'll keep the title of mayor, but will turn over his day-to-day duties to the city administrator. Barry has weathered years of allegations that he's a drug user. 2 witnesses have even testified to it before federal grand juries. Barry always dismissed the charges.
But I've never bought, used, sold, or indulged in cocaine.
But never before was the mayor captured on videotape. The turmoil led him to postpone a scheduled Sunday kickoff of his run for a 4th term. But Reverend Jesse Jackson, considered a possible rival to Barry, would not use the incident as a launching pad.
I do not intend to address the legal and political ramifications of this issue today.
As for complaints circulating through Washington that the drug case is racially motivated,
there's absolutely no basis to that claim. We will follow every allegation that we receive. We will pursue them aggressively against an individual regardless of their station, regardless of their place, regardless of their race.
But no one is counting the mayor out. Prosecutors acknowledge that with his popularity in the city, it will be difficult to convict him. But they say the case is strong, the videotape's compelling, and the investigation continuing, with more charges possible. Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
Marion Barry, today a sad story of personal tragedy and very likely political demise. It wasn't always that way.
He was one of those daring, courageous people who was there on the picket line, sitting in at the lunch counters, going to jail.
Barry's contemporaries in the black civil rights movement were today talking of his noble past as the first chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, as one of those who first channeled the new black political awareness of the 60s into action and results.
He has always been a people's man, down to earth,
and concerned about the problems of the poor.
The son of Mississippi sharecroppers, he had led black voter registration campaigns in the South and marches on Washington.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You're in.
He helped replow the political landscape, and then, knowing its furrows, was easily elected as Washington's mayor. He embodied hope in people who now feel despair.
We have, placed our souls with these people. Every time one falls, every time one is diminished, it hurts us. It hurts us to our core.
Down with dope! Down with dope!
Even in recent years, while under frequent suspicion for drug use, Barry campaigned against drugs. Some now call this hypocrisy, but the experts see cases of drug use in people like Barry all the time.
They start to feel that they're untouchable, and once that happens, they're in great danger.
But Barry was more than just a success. To those who populate the nation's capital, and more importantly to their children, he was a hero and more. Today at Spingarn High School, it was all the kids were talking about.
He has been a role model for a lot of youth, and everyone looks up to him. And right now, he has disappointed a lot of youth. He's a good man. He has done a lot for the city. That's what I'm looking at.
What the teachers trying to keep the kids off drugs are looking at is disillusionment.
I think that there is a disappointment, even with the kids who say that he's a role model, that there is a sense of disappointment, a sense of, well, where do we go from here?
Marion Barry, once so firmly entrenched in his constituency that he was called mayor for life. But a losing battle with cocaine may well have cut that political life short. One of his friends said today that power is a magnet to temptation, and Marion Barry succumbed. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Washington.